In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create this ocean scene using acrylic paints. To start off, I'm going to create my horizon line, and I'm just mixing together some blue and some white. I'm going to draw this line around 1/3 of the way down from the top of my painting to give my sky 1/3 of the canvas and my water 2/3. So for the first layer on my ocean, I wanted to create a gradient effect, and this is just where a color goes from being lighter to gradually becoming darker. So by starting with light blue at the top and then just adding very small amounts of blue into the mix, it will just gradually go from being light to being dark. I don't really bother washing my paintbrush very much during this process so that the colors blend together more easily. And if you added too much blue like me and it got a little too dark too quickly, you can always add more white paint to adjust it as you go. But if I ever end up having a hard time blending everything together, I usually just add a little bit more white. And once I reached the very bottom, I wanted to add a darker blue, so I just added a very small amount of black into my mix so that my blue would turn into a navy blue color at the bottom. For my sunset section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with these little blobs of white paint, and these are going to help me blend my sunset colors together a lot more easily. And when I start to add in color, I always work with very small amounts because I can always add more if I need to. So I'm just going to use this back and forth motion for the entire sunset area. It helps me blend my colors together a lot more easily if I just keep my brush stroke very consistent. So once I have that yellow section done, I'm just going to surround it with a little bit of red, and again, just using very small amounts of paint. And once I've completely surrounded my yellow area with red, I just wanted to blend those two colors together. So I scrape the extra paint off of my brush and then just swish back and forth over top of both colors to bring them together. And now what I'm doing here is I'm just adding a little bit more red so that there was sort of a barrier between the yellow and the blue. I didn't want my blue to get too close to my yellow because it would create some green colors in my sky. So by adding a little bit more red before I started with the blue sort of creates this safety barrier between the colors. If you're using acrylic paints like me, what I really love about acrylics especially is if you ever do something you don't really like or something unexpected happens, you can always just let them completely dry and then add fresh new paint on top. Because the layer underneath is completely dry, the new paint that you add won't mix in with it. So now what I want to do is I want to start adding on the wavy texture on top of my water. So I'm going to mix up a bunch of different tints and shades of blue, some that are really light and some that are sort of in the middle. I'll even just use the blue straight out of the bottle. I'll use some white and also some dark blue so that I just have a very large range of different blue shades. And I'm going to create these gently wavy lines and some dashes all over the water surface or all over the top of this gradient. But the gradient is still going to stick around and that effect is still going to remain just because I'm not going to completely cover it. But every single color is going to find itself all over the water area. When I start to add in the darkest shade of blue, I like to add most of it toward the bottom of the painting and up the sides. I tried to keep the center area a little bit lighter because that's where my sun is going to be reflecting off the water and adding a bunch of brightness later. So here I was trying to lighten up my sunset, but my paint was still too wet. So I decided to dry it completely with a hair dryer so that when I start to add in the details, it won't mix in with the paint that's already there. So now I can finally lighten up my sunset. I decided to add a little bit more white and also a little bit more yellow. And then I decided to paint my setting sun over top of this newly added section, just using a little bit of white and a detail-sized brush. Now I want to start adding more of those gently wavy lines and dashes back into my water. I'm using some white and that same detail-sized brush because I want it to look a little bit more detailed at this point. And I'm just focusing these underneath the sun, sort of trailing away from it to make it look like the sun is glimmering and reflecting off the surface of the water. I like to make sure, especially if I've added a little bit more blue back in as well, that my painting is completely dry before I start to add in some of the colors that I also see in my sunset. So I like to start off by mixing a couple of different colors that I see within the sky, like light yellow or oranges or pink or purple. And I'm going to add little wavy lines and dashes with my detail-sized brush into the water, so it also looks like the sky is reflecting off the surface too. And I decided that I needed a little bit more light blue in my waves as well. So I went back in with my detail-sized brush and I added some lighter blue wavy lines throughout the rest of my water. So before I start adding on the sparkles in the water, I just wanted to make sure my painting was completely dry, so I just hit it one more time with the hair dryer before I do the last part of my painting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a bunch of dots, and before they're completely dry, I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to move my finger around in a circular motion on top of those little dots of paint to make them look like they're little glowy spots. And some of them were a little bit too intense, so I washed and kind of mostly dried a paintbrush. It was a little bit damp, and I just run this slightly damp, clean brush over top of some of those circles to make them a little softer. I decided to make one a twinkly one, so I added what is just sort of like a plus sign with an X through it, but all of the other little glowy spots, I'm just going to add a white dot back into the center. And then what I did to finish my painting off is I just added more dots that I won't change or do anything else to, kind of surrounding and in between the ones that are glowing and sparkly. I hope you enjoyed following along with this video. If you decided to make a painting for yourself, I would love to see it. If you want to share, you can find me on any of the social media links that I have linked in my description box below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.